4, 3, 2, 1. Buckle your seatbelts. Batten down the hatches. Coming to you live from the Blazar Podcast Studios in Space City, Texas. It's time once again for the Capital Catalyst Show, the podcast for entrepreneurs to learn the secrets of attracting, raising, and closing capital from high net worth investors. Dedicated to your success, this is the Capital Catalyst Show. Now here's your host, Brad Blazar.
Hey, welcome listeners. Brad Blazar here, your host once again for an exciting episode of the Capital Catalyst Show, where we bring you everything about the world of OPM, other people's money. It's how we get rich, it's how we build our legacies, and more importantly, it's how you can go further, much farther, and get there much faster than you struggling to do things on your own. Today's guest is a wonderful entrepreneur and a business person. He's mastered the game. Personally, he's raised millions of dollars. You'll hear his story. And both he and I are involved in some real exciting projects that you're going to hear about in just a few minutes. So I'd like to welcome my good friend, my business associate, Paul Clewell, to the Capital Catalyst Show. Hey, Paul, how you doing today?
Hello, my friend. I'm wonderful. How are you, Brad? Great to be here. Thank you so much.
Other than the hot heat, I'm having a great day.
I'm telling any opportunity I have to talk with you, let alone see your face, is an honor. So thank you. Thank you for the invite, and I look forward to a very insightful conversation.
Oh, it's going to be great.
It'll be colorful too, I'm sure.
It will be, absolutely. So, I always like to get started by asking entrepreneurs and business owners when they come onto the show, what projects or what big things they're currently working on in their life. So can you spend a few minutes maybe just sharing a couple of big projects or big things you're currently involved with or working on?
Yeah, sure. I'd love to. And I always try to paint as much humility into it, because it's a lot of times it's not about me. It's more about the impact that I'm trying to impart for social good and to help people and businesses improve their position. So, right now the big time commitment is serving as the Chief Operating Officer for Legacy Live. And as you know, Legacy Live and its parent company, Legacy Education, is a spinoff of the old Rich Dad Poor Dad Robert Kiyosaki organization that we're now taking it on a new healthy path to a new NASDAQ listing. So that is taking up a lot of time. The other super exciting project is the real estate development that we're doing down in the Dominican Republic.
Yes.
So we are engaged with a couple of partners in the north side of the Dominican called Samaná. Building luxury vacation rentals to serve as passive income for investors who are interested in investing in real estate outside of the United States. So between those two things and holding down a household of a wife and 3 kids, life's pretty busy.
Fantastic. Let's transition. Obviously, both of those endeavors, Legacy Live and also, of course, the project in the Dominican, they require capital. Things don't happen for free. There's obviously various ways we can go about attracting and raise capital for projects. Can you kind of walk through the capital needs and, more importantly, how Legacy and how you and the rest of the team are attracting and raising capital for both of those projects you're working on?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy to. So, I think to do that, Brad, I think we pull back the stick. I think we go 30,000 feet on, where the capital raising market is, or where the ecosystem is, right? Like we know today that liquidity levels are low. Yep. Investors are really holding their wallets and their purse strings super tight. So it's a challenging time for an investment organization or a cap raising team to get the funds they need, even though we all know that the dry powder is out there.
Yeah,
right? It's a matter of getting connected with the right people, and typically, as you know better than anybody, sometimes when you put your strategy together for capital raising, and you all put a list, whoever's on the team, you put a list. I know this guy, and this guy, and we're going to go out and call the people we know within our network that we know are high net worth individuals. But even that list, regardless of how big or how small it is, that list gets exhaustive rather quickly, right? And 90% of that list of people that are in your warm market that are high net worth, 9 out of 10 are still going to say no. Right. So it can be a daunting task, especially if you're not prepared. So our strategy has been, going through that network of individuals that we have done business with in the past, or maybe have raised money with in the past. But I think what we're finding now, at least what I'm finding now, what's super important is that old adage of, your net worth is equal to your network. And I've heard people, even on our own team, say, hey, you know what? I've called everybody that I know. I've kind of exhausted my list. I'm not sure where to go from here. And I think what we have to keep in mind is, if you look at it like a nucleus, right? That the people that we know, that people like you and I know, that's our nucleus. But those people know people who know people. Right. Who know people, who know people, right? So I may think I can only tap into 20 people. And I think a lot of investors or people that are seeking to raise capital, they're so focused on their list that they're not asking those questions and doing the follow-up to say, hey, I understand you're not interested today for whatever reason. Do you know anybody that might be, right? Because that warm referral is worth its weight in gold. And that is really paying off dividends for us, no pun intended. But yeah, we are really tapping into our network kind of at the second and third layer to identify the people that may be interested in what it is we're doing, the philosophy that we're adopting, especially as it relates to breakout and doing a merger with this social networking platform, which is just this audio platform. And it is just, 7 out of the 10 fastest growing companies in the world are platform-based companies, right? So there's a lot of people excited. And I think at the end of the day, and I think the message is just be prepared, be prepared. For example, right? I came down to your boot camp in Miami, right? A couple of months ago. And I was literally, and for your listeners, I'll tell them now, I was not paid by you to say this, to say anything, because it's true. I was blown away by the level of content, even in a boot camp for 1 day, 2 days, the level of content and the wisdom and the knowledge that you were able to impart on the people in that boot camp. And I would even say that, those people who aren't even directly involved in capital raising should learn those basic skills, because in a business environment, the ability and or inability to raise capital by an executive team affects everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody downstream is going to get affected one way or another, right? So the breakout deal is super, super exciting. We looking at the competition, that most people are aware of Clubhouse, right? At one point in time, they are who we believe would be our closest competitor or closest avatar at this point, along with Triller. But you look at a company like Clubhouse, they had a $4 billion valuation at one point in time with 10,000 users.
Right.
That's mind blowing, and I think that's why the investment, the private equity ecosystem is tightening up on their purses, because they're looking at these numbers, saying, how does a company like that get to that level of evaluation without really having they haven't deployed a business model, they haven't proven they could make money. Right. And it really blows my mind. And then, Triller, the same thing, they've spent $1 billion just to get out of the gate. Right. So we think we're in a really, really good position with Breakout because the synergies philosophically, character traits, personalities, mission, values, like it all lines up so well that I'm expecting really good things.
Yeah, I'm excited about the project. And I think that when you look at creating a social media app like a Breakout, delivering educational content through it, having a small monthly recurring fee, obviously for the legacy platform, you're going to drive that long-term value. And, if you look back at Clubhouse, like you said, 10,000 users, that's a value of almost $400 per person that you sign up. And, when we acquire the Rich Dad business model, that database of people that we have in there is in the millions. Now, I don't know what percentage are going to become subscribers and users, obviously, of this, but, when you've got an audience that is captive and you can basically market to that audience something like this that's new and innovative, the valuation certainly could be in the multiple billions of dollars.
No question about it. And if you remember, just a couple of years ago, it used to be in the 80s and 90s, cash was king, right? And that still is true to a point. But then we transitioned with the proliferation of technology, we got into this saying, at least in the tech space, that data was king, right? Data was king. But now it's even converted, it's gone even further. Now it is the ability to convert data is king. Right. And that's the other strong play, uniqueness and differentiator that the legacy Breakout combination or synergy brings together, because the Breakout leadership team is so cutting edge on the implementation of things like AI and being able to record audio and integrating their other products, which are wildly successful products in their own mind, serving like, the LinkedIn community, for example. They are so highly specialized, and these guys have really got it figured out as it relates to converting data into sales and into revenue. So, man, I'll say it again, we're just so elated and so blessed and honored to be able to run down this trail with them.
Absolutely. You brought up a really important point earlier, Paul, as it relates to raising capital. And that is, your referral network. It's not, who do you know? It's really understanding that when you're raising capital and you're talking to potential investment partners, I always tell people there's three types of capital in the world. There is, of course, the money side. We all get that.
Yeah.
But there's also the relationship capital. There's also the intellectual capital. When you talk to somebody, if they have any expertise or knowledge within the industry or the framework of what you're doing, they could certainly become a strategic advisor. Invite them to your board of directors and say, look, if you decide to move forward with us, I see that there's a role with you within our organization as an advisor because you have a deep knowledge in what we're trying to do. And I'll give you a great example of that. Earlier today, we were on a Zoom, and it was Jerry and, of course, a couple other people that you and I know very well. And we were talking about some of the investors already in breakout. One of them happened to be Brad Lee. Now, Brad Lee, most people know if they follow Brad, he's huge on social media. He's spoken all around the country. He's got, of course, his top-rated podcast, Dropping Bombs, and he's the founder of Lightspeed. And I say, have we talked to him now about this? NASDAQ, the acquisition. And the people are like, no. And I'm like, why don't we go back and talk to him? But more importantly, who does he know that he can connect us with? Like, he knows everybody in the education space, the Ed Milet's, the Tony Robbins, the El Preciados, the Alex Hermosis, all these guys are making millions. And the question came up was, I know Brad. I've been on his podcast. I've shared the stage. But I know Jerry knows Brad. Cody knows Brad. Devin knows Brad. So the big question is, who knows him the best?
Yeah.
Who wants to lead the intro to get him with Jerry, the CEO of Legacy? Do I do that? Where it might be a couple emails, or maybe Don or Cody has a much better relationship because he's already an investor and they just pick up the phone and Brad answers. You know what I'm saying? So
absolutely,
it's understanding the relationship is key, but it's also more importantly understanding how to leverage those relationships and how to say, Paul, who are you connected with?
Yeah.
That we might also be speaking to. I understand this might not be for you, but perhaps it's for somebody that you have within your network.
Man, that is you just dropped an incredible bomb. That is a truth bomb that I think people oftentimes overlook. And I think there's a component to that relationship capital, Brad, that also comes into play. And that is the factor of timing.
Yes.
Right? Not only market timing, right? Because you could have a really good idea, have a great product or service. It could be launched. And so for whatever reason or whatever phase you are in, as a team in raising capital, timing is critical. And I think with the relationship capital piece of it, timing is critical for me. And I've learned this the hard way is, imagine we're playing poker or rummy, if you will. If you know how to play rummy, I kind of know. So I'm holding a bunch of cards, right? And I've got a bunch of aces, right? These aces in the hole, if you will. The Brett Lees, the Tony Robbins, the Dean Graciosis, right? The people that I know. Now, I'm not saying I know those guys, but as an example, there are a lot of investors who go, yeah, I know some really, really strong players, but man, I'm not sure when to play that card. I don't know when to play that ace in the hole. And what ends up happening is they want to hold it because they, and most people know, if I'm going to reach out to a Tony Robbins, I got one chance to reach out to Tony Robbins, right? He's not taking my call every week.
Right.
So we become hesitant or lack the confidence to actually play the card. And we hold it, and before you know it, the game is over. We moved on. Your competition made a strategic move, and they've trumped you in the market. Now they're running down the race, and they're looking at you in the rearview mirror. So I think that timing issue of when you play those cards of relationship capital, you can't hold them because they don't do you any good once your opportunity has gone downstream.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's transition for a moment. You've raised capital successfully. You've obviously been on both sides. How did you actually, I guess, begin the journey as somebody that recognized the importance and need for OPM, and maybe share the story on how you got started and what that journey kind of looked like for you, slugging it out in the trenches, making mistakes, really understanding what it takes to be a successful capital raiser today.
Yeah. So I've got a couple of war stories, and the scars, maybe even emotional to show for it. I really learned the hard way because I didn't have the luxury of having a Brad Blazar as a colleague or as a coach or as a trainer, right? To learn what the capital school teaches today. I didn't have it back then, but in the when was it? In the early 2000s. I was introduced to a gentleman who had a small domestic company based out of the Washington, D.C., Baltimore area. And he was in the business of building, commissioning, and integrating data centers, right? So again, in that data space. And he chased me down through a friend of a friend, like it always happens. And he knew I have an international background, both educational and in my corporate experience. And he came to me and he said, hey, I want to build a global footprint outside of the United States. I've got 15, branch offices, if you will, around the US. I want to go global, and I'm told that you're the guy. And I'm like, I'm flattered, but let's have a conversation about that. What does that mean? What does that mean? I'm the guy, because no one's ever said that to me. So anyway, this is where that journey started. So I accepted an offer to go work for this CEO and founder, to be his vice president of global development, if you will. Yeah. And I said, okay, where would you like to expand your footprint outside the United States? And he went, I don't know. You tell me. I said, how much money you got? He says, I don't know. How much do you need? Right. So it was really open-ended. So anyway, after we did a bunch of market research, and I came back to him and I said, hey, these 5 countries are ripe for the taking. Here's what it's going to cost. Right. I need X million for this one, this one, this one, this one. So it was, 15, 20, 25 million just to get started and to establish a footprint. Right. And as you can imagine, all of the, the cultural differences and the currency differences and the differences in laws and regulations, and it was a lot. And we came to a really fast conclusion that his cash flow coming from the domestic operations was not going to fuel the international expansion that he had in mind. And in his mind, he thought, well, let's do a pay as we go, right? Yeah. We'll bring some money in this quarter here domestically. I'll pull some aside. You use it internationally. It wasn't even making a splash in the pond, right? So we had to go out and raise money. And it was totally new to me. So in the most naive sense of the word, I literally just started picking up the phone and calling private equity groups, people that I knew could be in our space, that, not only would do something here domestically, but would do things internationally. And, I guess the silver lining in all of this, and it's something we've already talked about, it was about that relationship capital. For example, one of the countries that I had targeted was Saudi Arabia, as it relates to data centers, because there's this little known company out there, Saudi Aramco, happens to be the biggest company in the world. At least it was. I don't know if it is now. They were obviously a prime target. So we ended up doing business with Saudi Aramco, but it was because a relationship in the United States referred us to an engineering firm in Saudi Arabia, in Dammam, the Eastern Province. That gentleman referred me to somebody else. And before you know it, the person that I become friends with, and until to this day am friends with, is one of the sheiks of Saudi Arabia. Right. Wow. So if I go to Saudi Arabia, I literally stay at this gentleman's palace, right, as a guest. So that was where I got my start. And that was where I really had this eye-opening epiphany of, it's not necessarily how many people you know, it's knowing the right people, right? And you know this too, as well as anybody, that people have vast networks. And you can look somebody up on social media and, they got 5,000 followers on LinkedIn. But of the 5,000, like, how many of them are really of any value, right? The real answer is at most 150. It's called the Dunbar Law, right? The Dunbar Law says all of us, as big as we want to brag about how big our network is, at the end of the day, we really don't have relationships with more than 150 people in our space, in our world. So that was where I got started with raising capital. And fortunately, along the way back then, I was able to get connected with the right people.
Yes.
My superpower is building trust and articulating messaging. So I was very capable of articulating a problem, a solution to that problem, articulating what the market was, what the market needed. And once I was able to lock all those things down, the money flowed.
Yep.
Right? The money flowed. And again, it comes back to capital raise is a process. It's not a moment in time, right? It takes rapport building, which is only not nearly as significant as the trust building, right? For example, you and I can have rapport in the sense that we can say, oh, we both have a beard and we both know the same people and we both love to play golf and we love flying on planes and we love doing whatever. We both have a daughter, right? That's called building rapport.
Right.
That is not earning trust, right? Mm-hmm. Because trust is a feeling, right? Yeah. In order for you to trust me, I need you to believe what I believe.
Right.
Right. So it goes so far beyond rapport. And I know I'm getting off topic here. But kind of not, because without the ability to, and you have your trust matrix. Yeah. I mean, that's brilliant. The way you describe and the imagery you use to understand how you get to levels of trust in your boot camp, it's amazing. It's fantastic. And it's such a key critical component. So again, I think a lot of people, here's kind of the hack or the word of advice is rapport is important. Mm-hmm. Trust is far more important.
You hit the nail on the head, and I want to go back to that because the biggest mistake I see people make whenever they try to raise capital is they don't invest enough time on the front end to build that trust. And that's like right. You said, when I get on stage, and I actually learned this from one of my coaches, and I watched him, and he's one of the best connectors, and he's able to build instant rapport. The first thing he does when he gets up on any stage of any size is he leads with his beliefs. He starts right off. I believe everybody in life deserves a great coach. People that are coached will do this. I also believe this. And I asked him one day, and he said, because I know, Brad, in that audience, if the people share similar beliefs, there is an instant connection. They now want to go deeper with me. They're now attracted to me. And so if you understand that, the biggest mistake that people make when they raise capital, Paul, is they don't invest enough time on the front end. It's like, I got this deal. I need to raise money. I know you got money. Let me tell you about it. The person you're talking to is naturally going to say, oh, sounds interesting. Can you send me something to take a look at? That's just what we all would do as part of that process. You pitch me on something, let me take a look at it. But when you follow up and you try to get them to commit and open their checkbook, they never do. And you're wondering, like, what am I doing wrong? This is like the greatest deal. It's going to make a lot of money. What that other person is subconsciously saying to you is, I don't trust you.
Yes.
Like, you never gave me enough time on the front end to understand your values.
Yes.
To really know whether you're going to treat me as a fiduciary. And they're not going to come out and say that to you, but that's the subconscious mind saying, look, man, if you had slowed down this process a little bit, asked me the right questions, allowed me to ask you the right questions, and saved your pitch to maybe the third or fourth conversation, man, we'd be doing business.
No doubt about it.
And I talk about that in the trust sequence, which you were referring to earlier. That's the 6-step process that we go through as part of our mentoring. Starts with perception. Temptation is asking those questions deep enough to establish a connection where then you're able to move forward with that person. But that was such a golden moment that you shared with our listeners, because it is so true. And more importantly, it solves the biggest problem that a lot of those listeners are having, that are struggling, wondering why nobody's opening up their checkbook. It's because they're rushing that process.
Yes. They rush the process, and to your point, they just don't allow enough runway. So as an investor, if you don't give me enough runway to feel comfortable to get lift under my wings, the only answer is no.
The deal's not going to.
It's kind of like, if I bumped into you at a conference somewhere and I literally sprinted up to you and stopped dead in my tracks in your face. I said, Brad, I need $100. Hurry up! I need $100 right now. You would, even though you know me and I hope you trust me and we're friends and whatever, you would look at me and go, "What is wrong with you?" Right? You would, right? I would.
Yeah.
But if I slowly approach and says, "Hey, man, like, while I'm here, if you can I borrow $100 because there's a homeless family out on the sidewalk that I just saw, and I'd really like to get them some food. Could you help me do that? Right now we're talking about human connection. We're talking about the human condition, and again, I think so many people who are pitching are losing sight over the fact that you're talking to another individual, another human being who has the same anxieties and problems in this life as you do. They woke up on the wrong side of the bed this morning and didn't have enough coffee, just like you did, right? So it's that ability, or I should, it's making sure you're not tone deaf to the fact that you are talking with another individual who has their own stuff going on in their world, both business world and personal world, and you have to be acutely in tune in meeting them exactly where they are in that moment. You can't just run up into somebody's face and say, I got something great for you. I need your money.
Right.
That never goes over well. I've never heard one time where that's ever gone over well. Right. And to your point, it's allowing the runway. It's, talking to a target saying, I may not, we have something upcoming. We're not quite prepared yet, and be honest and be transparent and say, but when we are prepared, would you mind if I followed up with you and had a conversation about what your level of interest is in a great opportunity to invest money? Not meet me next time because of my interest, because I need money. It doesn't matter if it's yours or somebody else's. So I think that's where investors, the people, the capital raisers often make that mistake, is they go into these meetings and into these pitch presentations with the only intent of what they're going to get out of that meeting. Right? That is, their intent is, I want this gentleman or this lady to say yes and write me a check. We don't spend nearly enough time building that trust and sharing with them why we came to them, why this is a great opportunity for them to take some of their dry powder and deploy it.
Yeah, no, that's powerful stuff right there. A lot of really great information shared there. Let's talk about the pitch, because you just touched upon that. And I'm of the belief that pitching an investor is really where the magic happens. And, it's getting the idea, the investment concept, what you're doing over home plate, but really allowing the person that you're talking to really understand, at the end of the day, what it is you're trying to do here. Because let's face it, in any investment transaction, there's either a private placement memorandum or there's some legal documents. There's always going to be the legal side that really, memorializes the investment and acknowledges, hey, you just wrote a check and, here's what you get for it, a bunch of paper, here's a stock certificate, or here's a limited partnership agreement, or whatever. But most people, and I've actually found this to be true, I've raised money now for well over 30 plus years. And, we give people this big, thick private placement memorandum with all the risk disclosures and the investment objectives and who's on the team. And I cannot tell you how many times in my heart and in my gut, I know the person never even looked at the damn thing. It's like, thank you for giving it to me. I understand it's a formality, but literally I've been in situations where I have gone in as an expert witness, being called in to represent and defend some of the biggest financial services firms in the world, like CIBC Oppenheimer.
Yeah.
And the attorney representing both sides would look at the person and say, did you read the offering memorandum? And the answer is like, well, I kind of glanced through it a little bit. That
means no. That's a longhand for no.
Yeah, but exactly. It's a long answer for no. But it's really in the pitch. And, I've looked at literally thousands of presentations. We obviously call them pitch decks in the world of finance or raising capital. But it's really where your story takes on pictures, takes on like a whole persona. And I tell people, when you're pitching, it's like you're on stage. Man, you got to bring your A game. Amen. You got to create the FOMO. You got to build the excitement. Yeah. You got to build to an inflection point, get that other person excited in what it is you're doing. And you're a professional at doing this, but what do you see as some of the maybe mistakes that other people have made that you've worked alongside, or maybe that you've seen yourself, that just totally screwed up their presentation and their pitch?
Yeah. So boy, that's, again, you've just dropped another truth bomb. So there's a lot there. There's a lot that I'd like to comment, but to close the loop on what you were talking about, with regards to handing over, memorandums and financial models and all of those things that we as capital raisers think that the investor wants to have. And they don't, because like you said, they don't read it. And so I've adopted in my own practice of raising capital over the years, and now is I don't give away any of that stuff until they ask for it. Because when they ask for it, now I know they want it.
Ooh, that's
right? Instead of giving it to them and they throw it in the corner of the room, and the next time you visit them 2 weeks later, you go back into the same conference room and you see it sitting there in the corner where they left it, and they're not reading it. So my recommendation or advice would be, have all of that stuff prepared. It's necessary. It's required to be prepared, but don't give it until they ask for it. That's how you know they want it.
Right.
Simple. At some point, they're going to want it, right? If they're interested, they're going to want it. But don't be premature and saying, look how prepared I am. Look at all the great stuff I put together. It has no bearing, and it's not going to move the needle on whether you get a deal or not. So I always say, hold off, wait until they ask, then give it to them. So to get into what you're with regards to the deck itself, you remember the days, a quick story. Remember the days like when we were in school, we would sit and the teacher would play a movie, and it was on the big, the big reel on the front, little reel on the back. And sometimes that thing would break or it would fall off the track and the movie would stop. Or if you've been to a movie theater, you go with your family and you watch a movie and there's a glitch or something happens in the film.
Right.
And it takes you out of your mojo as a listener and as a viewer, right? Because it's like there's this start and stop, and there was this huge, dramatic buildup of a moment in the movie, and all of a sudden the screen went blank.
Right.
And it's hard to get back into the feeling and the emotion that you were having in the moment before that blackout or for that interruption or disruption. So I say that, Brad, because to me, it's a great metaphor of of the pitch deck. And you've already alluded to the fact that your deck is a story. It has to be painted with visual and color, and it really has to exude emotion and draw out emotion. So the biggest mistake, to finally get to your question, the mistake that I see so much is when people are building their decks, there are these disruptions from slide to slide. Like the slides don't connect and don't flow from slide to slide, right? So there's these disruptions or blackouts. And what I find happening as an investor, I look at a slide and I'm listening to the presenter and I'm kind of looking at the slide. All of a sudden they move to the next slide, and I feel like they've just lost me in the shuffle somewhere. I'm like, wait, I don't. Yeah. How do we get here? Because we 30 seconds ago we were talking about this. Now, so my point is, the deck has to have a flow. It's like saying you want you're in the mood for a piece of banana bread, and I walk up to your desk and I give you a banana and I give you some flour and I give you a couple of eggs and some butter and maybe some walnuts, and I go, there you go, there's your bread. Right. And you look at me like I have 5 heads because I might as well. So to me, that deck has to have all of those ingredients, and they have to work together. They have to flow together. They have to congeal to tell that story, to bake that bread, if you will. Right. So that, I think my biggest, the biggest takeaway that I would love for your viewers or listeners to take away from this is make sure that deck flows slide to slide in a very logical sense, but more importantly, tapping into the heart in a very emotional way, so that you can take people on your journey in your story, so that when they get to the end, they go, wow, that was incredible. Right. So that's to me, that's the biggest part, is making sure that those slides connect.
Yeah. Well, it's that, plus it's also the perception you give people through that delivery. It's the difference between, spending some time, or better yet, and I always say it sometimes pays to invest a little bit of money. Hire an expert illustrator to put together your pitch deck that does this professionally for a living, that can take you and make you look like a multi-million-dollar, better yet, $1 billion brand. Yeah. Because perception is everything in the mind of an investor. Nobody likes to invest in somebody that they perceive that's struggling or is not successful, or the business is floundering. And I can't tell you, I've looked at literally hundreds of pitch decks, and it's quite obvious, man. The guy really did not invest the time or energy to put something together that wows me, that makes me feel like I want to be part of this. I'm handed a pitch deck, and there's a staple in the top corner, and the cover is color, but maybe the rest of it is black and white. Spend a little bit of money, man. Get a nice, clear, glossy cover, a nice spiral binder, the nice black vinyl on the back. Every slide has pictures, and you really go through this and say, does this represent me and my company at the highest level? But it's not just about that. It's really about the brand. There should be some type of a common brand consistency. So your website ties into that message. Your business card incorporates the same fonts, the same colors, so that now, like any of the great companies on the planet, people start to resonate with the brand and what that company stands for. All of those things are really, really hugely important. You've shared a couple of major gems here today, Paul, and I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to connect with our listeners.
That's my pleasure. My pleasure.
Capital Catalyst Show. I'm sure a lot of people are going to want to follow you, but more importantly, also follow the excitement that we're both building as part of the Legacy Education team. How can people connect or follow you on social media?
So social media, Facebook is PC 10X official. So for those nobody knows, and it doesn't matter for this call, but I'm also a certified keynote speaker and 10X elite coach with the Grant Cardone 10X platform. So PC 10X official is my handle. I guess they call them handles. Instagram. You can find me on Facebook just with my name. You can find me on LinkedIn with just my name. And I'm never, so my email address is pclewell@legacyeducation.com. And I'm one of the rare people who don't mind phone calls. So I don't mind handing my number. It's area code 678-595-0039. If you want to call and talk about, pitching, or what does capital raising mean for you and your organization and how you to go about it, I'd love to have a conversation, which is going to culminate in handing them off to our friend here, Mr. Brad Blazar, anyway, because he is the master at teaching how to go raise capital. So so that's that. I'm easy to find, brother.
I appreciate that. Well, thank you so much. And listeners, what I will share is, if you liked this episode of the Capital Catalyst Show, more importantly, if you learned something here today that you can use in your business or on this journey of just becoming a better capitalist, understanding that, Paul and myself and others we've had on prior episodes are all doing this and doing it well, do me a favor, click the link, become a subscriber to the show, like this episode, and we'll see you back in a week or two with another exciting episode with another capital raiser as we master the game in your life of understanding how to use OPM. This is Brad Blazar saying thank you so much for being a listener of the Capital Catalyst Show. And more importantly, we'll see you next time.
You've been listening to the Capital Catalyst Show with Brad Blazar, the best place for entrepreneurs interested in doing something big in life, having considerably less stress, and a more balanced life. Go to bradblazar.com for more ways to accelerate your success.